Oh, sorry everyone. I'm not sure if you could hear me. I think my microphone was on mute. Apologies. So I'm going to start this over again. So, as I said before, you could hear me. I am Marcy, the founder of Lisanga Vibes. Lisanga Vibes is a safe space for the African diaspora. We produce events as well as a podcast, a YouTube channel with great discussions, and physical events for our audience. Last year we had our anniversary party in London. This is the group picture, and the year before it was also in London. But we are going to hopefully bring this to Paris with lockdown restrictions permitting us to have beautiful events. And tonight we're going to have a great discussion with our guests about Congolese Rumba, which made its entrance into the Intangible Cultural Heritage list of the UNESCO last year. So I'm not going to tell you too much about the amazing bios of our guests, but I'm going to welcome them on stage and hopefully let them share with you a few words about who they are, what they've done, and then kick off a great discussion about African music. So if you guys are ready, if you could just say hello in the chat, tell me where you're coming from, where you're connecting, so we can check that we have no further technical issues for tonight's discussion. That will be amazing. So I'll quickly remove the presentation, welcome them both, and we're going to continue. Hello, Alain.
Hello from
Can you hear
Rabat. How
me
are
well?
you?
Hello,
Yeah, I
I'm
can hear you
fine.
well.
Apologies for that technical issue. My microphone was on mute, but now it's back on. I'm going to also welcome Lubangi.
Hey, how are you guys?
Not too bad, not too bad. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Glad to hear.
Everyone's looking nice tonight. I like that. Okay, so we're going to just bring back the presentation quickly, just so that our audience can understand how lucky they are to have an amazing panel tonight to discuss the movie The Rumba Kings, which has won several awards internationally and was recognized as a best documentary in many, many great cities for cinema in the world. And for anyone who loves music, this is a movie that I definitely recommend. I was lucky enough to see last year in London. And I think it also won the Best Documentary Award in the Doc and Roll Festival in London. So that just shows how amazing the movie is. I can hear an echo in my microphone, so I'm not sure if it's the same for the audience. If you could just tell me if you hear the same or not, we'll try and resolve that as we move on. Okay, Alan, I'm going to
Hello.
let you introduce yourself because we can see you on the screen. So if you could just share with us a few words about who you are.
Uh, Hello, everybody. Thank you for being with us tonight. My name is Alan Brain. I'm a filmmaker from Peru. I also have a United States citizenship. My whole life, I have been doing sort of documentary films, long form, mid length, and really, this is the Rumba Kings is my first feature length documentary film. I spent 7 years of my life working in Congo for the United Nations missions for the Democratic Republic of the Congo, doing documentaries about the work of United Nations, but also some small documentaries about Congolese culture, Congolese cuisine, Congolese painters, Congolese lawyers, also Congolese musicians. And so the Rumba Kings is my first feature-length film. We are super happy with Lubangi and with everybody involved in the film because it has received so much love. It premiered in May 2021 in Doxa Festival in Canada, and it has been already selected in more than 30 film festivals around the world. It has won 8 awards, and the most important thing, it has carried very high, I believe, the flag of Congolese Rumba and both.
Wow. That's just amazing. Congratulations and thank you for this great introduction. Let's move now to Lubangi. Hi.
Hello.
Hello. Can you
Yes,
quickly introduce yourself for us, please?
of course. I am Lubangi Muniania. I'm an African art historian. Um, specialized in visual and performing arts of Africa. And I have worked with different institutions such as museums, universities, cultural centers, uh, musical festivals. And I might add that I did also work with zoological societies, the one in New York, the Bronx, and also the one in Illinois. Um, the idea was to try to come out with an attractive programs to bring in different type of audience to this site. So very interesting and successful, I might say. Uh, I also I've worked with musicians, Cuban musicians. I've worked with Congolese musicians, like Kofi Olomide, Papa Wendo Kolosoi,
Wow.
um, Papa Wemba,
Wow.
Lokwa Kanza, Awilo Longomba, you name them. I've worked with them. Chico Mawatu, and we actually did a project with Chico Mawatu. It was a Rumba project, which was nominated for the NAACP Image Awards in 2008. So, before UNESCO, Hollywood did recognize Rumba. It was nominated in 2008, the very first Rumba album to be nominated for the NAACP Image Awards. Um, of course, I mean, I think this is enough. So, yep,
Well, thank you very much for this
you're welcome.
presentation as well. Could you just quickly say which album you referred to when you were talking about the one that was recognized by the NAACP?
The album was, is entitled Kimbanda Nzila.
Right,
Kimbanda Nzila. Yeah, by Shiko Mawatu.
right. I think we have a small sound issue. I'll try and see if I can. Okay, I'm just quickly checking in the background if I've got any issues with echo cancellation, but it seems fine so far.
Okay.
So if we have any issues, just let us know in the comments so we can try and manage that as we discuss together. Are we good, Alain?
Yep, yep.
Yeah? Okay. I'm just going to quickly show you a presentation with a few Congolese artists as we try and resolve the sound issue in the background. Okay, so I will show you a few pictures and we will try and find who these Congolese artists are. So last week we've tried the same game and people were very good. They literally found everyone in a few seconds. So we'll try and see if tonight we are as lucky as last week or not. If we're not that lucky, we'll ask our experts to help us find who they are. So I've asked our experts not to say anything to give you a chance to find them. So let's see. This is an easy one. So it shouldn't take you that long to find out. So hopefully a few responses start coming through. I'm refreshing my page. Yes.
I see. Yeah.
Okay, Fadi Pupa, that was easy. This is a super easy one because he's a big artist right now. I think he even opened for the African Football Cup of Nations or something. So he's very, 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 very visible right now. Okay, so do we know who this is? If we have a few people who know, this is also an easy one. I think he's even in the documentary as well
Yeah,
as
he's.
one of the commentators. So we'll give you a few seconds. We clearly don't have the same audience as last week because last week people were just firing through responses.
Oh yeah, that's
Ha!
it.
Papa Wemba. Papa Wemba. Okay. Next one. Papa Wemba responses. Yes, we're starting to see some responses. We need people to be a bit active to help us here. This is another huge Congolese artist.
Yeah, big one.
A huge, huge, huge one. So who will find this one? We've got a few players here. Don't be shy. I can see responses coming through. There we go. Well
There
done.
we
Taboulay, Franco. Sorry, Rochero. Rochero Taboulay. There we go. Okay, now we're getting into the difficult ones. So anyone recognizes this group of musicians? Anyone? We're still seeing through a few responses coming for Taboulay. No? No lucky winners on this one? Shall we give them the response? Who wants to give them the response?
Yes.
Okay, Alain, we're listening. Oh, no,
Uh,
Grand Cali, they found that. Well done.
that's it. That's it.
Okay, yeah.
just in time, just in time, just in time. Okay, Grand Cali and the African jazz. Yes, Grand Cali and the African jazz. Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, next picture. These are not easy ones, but I'm sure we will have a few people who will find them. Come on. It's another group, same era as the previous one. Hey, Dr. Nico. Yes. Dr. Nico.
Yep.
Yes. An African Fiesta Fisa Orchestra. Good. So we've got a few responses. Definitely a group less active than last week, but we will get there. Last picture before I open my discussion on this specific musician. This is an easy one, so we should see like all of the responses coming through at the same time because this is super easy.
That's it.
Come on. Hey, Franco. Franco Macchiadi. Franco. Yes, amazing. Well, that was the end of our little quiz. And we can now start the discussion with our experts. So before we go into too many details, I would like you two to help us just break down what is Congolese Rumba, what has been added to the list of intangible cultural heritage last year, and why it's so relevant for the Congolese community. Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you, Alan. Well, Congolese Rumba is actually a urban music. Uh, there's a difference between traditional music and urban music. So when we talk about Congolese Rumba, we are referring to urban music, a phenomenon that took Congo over, which stem from the city, mainly Kinshasa. Back then, it was known as Leopoldville. So that's what Congolese rumba is. However, without getting into details, there is an interesting dynamic that happened and that made the Congolese rumba possible, the urban music. Uh, that is the reason why we are here to try and explain this. Now, as we know, this urban music, which really became popular in the 50s, though it started like in you know mid late 40s, but it really became popular in 1950s, way before Congo became an independent country. Uh, so what UNESCO has done, UNESCO has acknowledged this creativity of the Congolese people. You know, it's not just the musicians. You know, you have to understand that musicians come from the public. You know, and they are feed off the public. You know, so the public, the musicians, and the media, and all of this together, they created a form of music that UNESCO has acknowledged today. So it's such a big thing. It's a big deal because from now on, we can talk about Congolese creativity in good terms. There's no
Yeah.
doubt about it.
Thank you, Lubangi. Do you want to add a few words, Alain?
I think that's it. The title of World Cultural Heritage that UNESCO has decided to grant Congolese Rumba is going to help preserve this music, right? Forever, hopefully. And it will also help, I hope, create a space for this Congolese creativity. Congo is a huge source of musicians. You know, there is so much untapped talent in Congo for everything related to music and other arts also. So I hope that this will help craft a space where Congolese musicians can thrive, you know, all over the world under this umbrella, this flag of Congolese Rumba. You know? The UNESCO is recognizing, I think, and I said that last week in the show, is recognizing two things. On one side, is recognizing this collection of subgenres that all together, you know, like a puzzle, create Congolese rumba, right? That in decades, it's a little different. Like the Congolese rumba of the 50s, it's a little bit different than the 60s and the 70s, the 80s, but they all have the same DNA, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's one part of the recognition. But the other part is also recognizing the Kumba part of the story, which is that the rumba, this Cuban rumba, this traditional ritual music that was born in Cuba in the late 1800s, right? And that was the music that gave birth to all Cuban music, to son montuno, son cubano, to everything. That music, that traditional Cuban rumba, had a Congolese DNA there because there were Congolese musicians involved there. So that's also somehow, I believe, part of the recognition of UNESCO because that was in the dossier that was presented to UNESCO. No?
So can you just stay there and can we just maybe quickly go through some of the influences into Congolese rumba? So you've mentioned son Kuban. Can we just go through some of these influences that have come and blended with the Congolese traditional music sounds that as we know of it today?
I think that Lubangi will have a lot of interesting things to say about this, but just to start a conversation about this, I believe that the most important component of Congolese rumba is the huge wealth of traditional music of Congo, you know, coming from different ethnic groups that on the before even the 40s were all, as Lubangi explained on the last show, were all together in Leopoldville, influencing each other and learning from each other. And from that fusion, I think that's the main element. Then you have other elements. Probably the second big element, I think, is son cubano, son montuno, this Cuban music that came on records to Leopoldville and other cities in Africa, and then the Congolese fell in love with, because it was somehow their own music that was coming back. It was their own beat. So they fell in love with this, but it influenced the creation of the music. And you have a little tiny bit of the music of, for example, Tino Rossi, you know, this European singer that was also very famous in Leopoldville, and that Calais, somehow, Grand Calais, the Joseph Kabasele Grand Calais, the singer and leader of the African Jazz Orchestra, has a little bit of Tino Rossi in his singing, you know. So that's, I think those, you have also highlight, you have West African music that influence also Congolese rumba. So all of that comes together, but I think the biggest components are the traditional music of different ethnic groups of Congo and son cubano, the music coming from Cuba.
Lubangi, do you want to add your input as well?
Okay, I my approach is from Congolese perspective. You have to understand that before all of this, because I don't want people to think that, oh, Congolese started music when the Cubans started music. No, music was there way before that. We need to know that Congolese were not acknowledged as creators of music. They were looked at as savages. So they had no platform
Mm.
to claim any creativity in any type of music that they did. Okay? And they did not have a model from Africa to follow after. Okay? So this is a serious psychological issue that, it was found in people. Now, you have to understand that those are people who were oppressed. Okay, they were denied of basic rights. So when you are born in under this type of condition, it's hard for you to even be proud of your own name. So what happened was, because I mean there were all type of music in the world back then that was also played in Congo. But why only the song Cuba? Why only that? Pretty much. Okay? It was a sound, like Alain said, they were able, I'm saying the Congolese were able to recognize uh, in terms of their soul connected with the sound of the conga, the sound of the ngongi, okay, clave, which were or still are part of Congo music or Congolese music or Congolese tradition. Now, if you were a Congolese back then, listening to those sounds, it was like it came from heaven, because those are your own music that pretty much like God or the angels put them together. It was modernized and it say, here, now you can claim your dignity. Here it is. You see that? So it wasn't like, okay, let's just copy them blindly. No, they were able to identify elements of themselves. So it wasn't difficult. That's how they were able to express themselves freely and excel and become so creative, and in doing so, they in a way expressed their own independence before they were given illegal independence in Brussels. So you have people, someone like Wendell Colosoi was already playing guitar and singing and making people dance when he came out with Marie Louisa,
Yeah.
that famous record.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't know anything. I remember, I interviewed him. He said, I didn't know anything about rumba. I didn't know what rumba was. I was just playing my music. You see, now you have more sophisticated Congolese like Roger Izeidi, Vicky Longomba, Grand Calais, Calais Jeff, who knew what the deal was. Meaning,
Yeah.
they were facing the Western world. You had to be an evolué. Evolué is a label that was given to some Congolese who had basic education, and they were deemed to be civilized. So they were given that label called evolué. So you had to dress in certain way. I mean, pretty much like a European person. You had to
Yeah.
speak like a European person. So therefore, the music they did, people like Calais, they knew it. For us to be accepted in the world, we have to be like the Europeans. But you can't be just like the Europeans. But the Cubans were like a model for them to follow easily.
Mm.
Okay, that because some Cubans were like black and they're like, wow, they are singing our music to them. So let's follow them little by little. As a matter of fact, some Congolese actually, um, made songs in Spanish. Okay, not a good Spanish.
Thank you.
They just wanted to sound like they were international. Because if you kept singing in Kikongo, Lingala, you were still looked at as savage. So they were dealing with these issues. I don't know if you see where I'm coming from.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah. So it's
absolutely.
very important for me to bring that up uh, as a Congolese person because that was not talked about very often back then. A lot of people deny themselves their names, for instance. You know, their own names. I mean, they would want to be known as Franco, Gon, Calais. Calais is short for Kabasele. I mean, that's too long,
Mm.
you know, so too long. So they needed to have all those,
Dr. Alain
short names.
Paul. Yeah.
Nicolas,
Cassandra.
Cassandra, it was like Nico, just short. All of that. I mean, it's psychological. So they were dealing with so much to get to where they got.
Great. So we've got a few questions. You do want to make a comment, Alan?
Yeah, yeah. I want to add something. Possible. I think that perspective that Lubangi is bringing is the real perspective. That's how we all should see it, And I just want to take a moment for people to understand that it may not be easy. We have been made aware of the situation of people under oppression by all these American films that deal, you know, with the slavery, with the slavery times in the United States, this horrible. And so we have seen how it goes. Well, we haven't seen much of how that unraveled in the Belgian Congo, right? But it's clear that it was very bad, tough, hard oppression. And so Lubangi, I think, is very right when he says that even making music in that situation of oppression is trying to achieve your own cultural emancipation. And so the people that were making music from Adu Elenga to Wendu to Henry Bowane, all these musicians in the very early times of the beginnings of Congolese Rumba, they were already trying to become independent culturally, emancipating themselves by just engaging in the act of making music. And that is a huge truth. I want to thank you, Lubangi, for bringing that up.
Thank you, Alan. We've got a question. What music is what Jean Mwenda Bosco played? What music did Jean Mwenda Bosco played?
Uh,
Okay. Uh, Jean Mwenda Bosco, he came out of Lubumbashi, the Katanga province. That's where Jean Mwenda Bosco came out of. A lot of people would not know it. Now, you have to remember one thing, Marcy, that back then, remember when Congo became independent in 1960, it only took few months. Katanga ceased to be part of Congo.
Yeah.
All right. So there was a heavy Belgian influence. And because the Belgians invested, not only the Belgians, but so many Western countries and shareholders invested through Belgium, of course, because Belgium played this big role of a broker. So they invested heavily in Katanga,
Yeah.
in minerals. So you still see that today. They still have that attitude of, so what? I can be in, I can, take off. I can go away and then leave you hanging, because the Belgians made them believe that Congo is nothing without Katanga. So they were like these spoiled children, and it was a different dynamic compared to Kinshasa. All right. So when we talk about Rumba, it was mostly Leopoldville.
Yeah.
And
Right.
Katanga was doing a whole different type of urban music. Someone like Jean Bosco Mwenda, was doing what they would call, he was a crooner with a guitar, crooner. A great composer, and that's why he was mostly singing in Swahili. But because of that wasn't rumba per se, but because of the dynamic in Leopoldville and how popular, and in Leopoldville, it was several groups of people together. Okay, people were unified easily in Leopoldville.
Yeah.
Easily, people came from Katanga, from Kisangani, I mean, Kasai, Kananga, the Matadi, they came from Bandaka. All of them were in Kinshasa. So it was like this unity of creativities put together. No man, there was no doubt that they influenced the rest of the country. While they were doing this, Jean Bosco was also tagging along because he didn't want to be left alone. But he was able to do this crooner with solo guitar and singing. Sometimes he will do few beats of rumba just to stay uh, relevant. But make no mistake, he was a great singer with great, great, great songs. And then he had a brother. A lot of people don't talk much about his brother. His brother was one of the best composers, songwriters who actually left Congo early on and then went to Americas. But that's a whole different story.
Okay. So you're saying that we now had a Congolese crooner in Jean Mwenda Bosco.
I'm sorry, say that again. I didn't hear you.
I said you're saying that he was not really playing Congolese rumba, but he was a crooner.
He was a
So
yeah.
okay, okay. Well, thank you for this question. I hope it helps. We're going to continue actually on all of these external influences, and I would like us to take some time to talk about the Afro-Latin connections between Congolese rumba and what they've recognized in son cubano and so on. And I would also like you both to touch on some of the most popular Cuban artists that claim their Congolese heritage. So who wants to start?
Okay, I can start. I think if we want to expand on the Afro-Cuban side, so the first connection of this fusion, this melting pot of different ethnic groups, no, in Leopoldville, enriching each other musically with the music from Cuba, which somehow was their own music, The first connection is through the radio Congo Belge in Leopoldville, that was had some radio shows that were playing this Cuban music. This Cuban music also came into the form of records, 78 revolution per minute records. Uh, they were called JV records because they were gramophone Victor. Although at that point in time, some Congolese, with a lot of love towards the music in these records, they called them JV, like the grand vocalist, like the great singers. Uh, and so you had their iconic Cuban songs like El Manicero or El Paralítico, iconic Cuban bands like Don Aspiazú, Trio Matamoros. And so that's the first wave of Cuban music that connects with the Congolese. But that's on 78 revolution per minute records, right? They are not vinyl records. They are made of something else. They are called shellac. They are really thick. They don't bend easily. But later, years later, when the Afro Latin music, right, that starts to grow in the world, like we're talking about the 60s already, the late 60s, the salsa movement, like the Fania All Stars, Johnny Pacheco, Ray Barreto, all of those musicians, those records, those are vinyl records, those are albums, they arrive also to Congo. And some of these bands like African jazz and even sometimes okay jazz, they start also getting the influence of this new wave of Afro-Cuban music. And you have some Congolese rumba songs that are clearly influenced by a specific Afro-Cuban song of this second wave. For example, Africa Mokili Movimba, the African jazz that we all love, has a little bit of two songs. One is Mother Rumba from Celia Cruz, and the other is an old song from the Sonora Matancera. It's called Las Muchachas, the girls. So you can see that a little bit of that song was used in Africa Mokili Movimba, and also a little bit of Mother Rumba. And there are many like that. There is a song, famous song from Portavales, Guillermo Portavales from Cuba, El Carretero, that was also done by Franco. So you see the connections there, Lubangi,
Yeah, absolutely. They, like I said, Congolese wanted to be relevant in what they were doing. So you have to understand that they did not have any platform whatsoever. These are the people that did not want to be erased in the history. So every time you talked of Congo, it was Belgium. It wasn't the Congolese themselves. Okay? I'm not going off subject. I just want to give you an example of if you ask people who were the freedom fighters, you will hear Kasavubu, Lumumba.
Yeah.
They won't really tell you who was there before that. Okay? But prior to Lumumba and all of these names that we know, there were people who were fighting every day.
Yeah.
Okay? But who do we recognize? We only recognize the ones that the Belgians said, yes, come and sit with us. That's it. Okay? If I give you a name of Lumpungu, you will not know who he was. Lumpungu was a chief who, he learned how to write and then he spoke French. He wrote a letter to the King of Belgium.
Wow.
He said, I'm a king, just like you. There is no way for me to be a subject of another king from Belgium. So therefore, me and my people are not going to follow your rules. He was arrested and killed in public. See, what he wanted to talk about, what he wanted from Belgium was independence. He was actually telling them, I'm not going to ask you to give me independence. I'm already an independent person. Whatever you're doing is not relevant to me. I don't care, but I just want you to know. So this is what I'm trying to tell you. There were people who played music and they were not relevant. Nobody paid attention to them. Now, when you have people who using what I call a Luzitu, a Malembe. If you go to Cuba, you find that concept. There is actually a song, Malembe, in Cuba, which is a Congo culture. Okay, remember the Congo people, meaning people from the kingdom, the ancient kingdom. They were the first one that were in touch with the Western world. And they've learned so much. They knew that if you stood on the way of the Westerners, they killed you. Okay, if you stood there, there was no joke about it. They did kill a lot of people. There is a recorded incident, and history books what they did to the Kisi's houses in the Congo Kingdom, burned them down. No joke. If you go to Equateur, among the Bangala people, there was a chief, Monjiba, who came and wanted to greet them. He said, "Oh, there are some people coming, Mundele," okay. He stood there with his people to greet them. All he heard, fire, bah, 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 bah. I mean, they killed the whole village without saying hello. You understand? So you have to understand that type of mentality would put someone at a situation where you have to come out with a different strategy. Okay? Remember, whatever they had, the Congolese did not have that. The gun. So the people who actually coined the term bondoki or munduki are Bangala. It means bondoki, witchcraft. That's where the word gun comes from. It used to kill people. You understand? So Bakongo people knew this. So they had to create this Malembe type of mentality, Luzitu. But, it's like go easy on them and just, like you are just saying yes. But you got to know how to speak in metaphor. You got to know how to speak in a way that they don't understand.
Yeah.
And find what they like. Whatever they like, try to be that. But don't lose yourself. Okay? And pretty much that's, psychology. If you look at it, then you understand why they would want to put on a different image and then use what is internationally acceptable. And then later on, you could do your Odimba. I mean, now that you've been accepted, you can come out with Odimba. You can come out with Mutuashi. Odimba's been there. Lokombe has been there. Kumba has been there. Okay? Kumba means music. It's been there. The Madimba, which later on in Latin America became marimba. Madimba has been there. But how many people do you know talk of Madimba? You only hear about marimba. But Madimba has been there. It's the instrument that looks exactly like the marimba.
Native.
It's been there. The conga, ngoma. It's been there way before the Africans actually left Africa and went to America.
Yeah.
So to me, there was not an official link between Latin America and Congo. Not an official one. That, hey, we are handing you this heritage. No. It was a cultural thing where they fell in love with a sound that just made them feel themselves. And they took it from there. And they, like Alain said, it came to them in forms of record.
Right.
It was on the radio.
Right.
Quickly, they took on it like it was some soul food or something.
Amazing. We've got a couple of questions from the audience. The first one that I will take is an easy one. Who were the biggest artists on Brazzaville side?
Wow, a lot. You have Polo Kamba to begin with, and then just a few, probably one decade or a decade and a half, you have Levantú de la Capital, the greatest orchestra probably ever from Brazzaville, probably
Amazing.
almost at the same level as the African jazz or the OK jazz, huh?
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and probably an orchestra that has survived for longer than those two because it's still there, and with his own style, which is has some nuance, some differences musically from the Odemba of OK Jazz and this more like, let's say, Cubanized rumba of African jazz. Huh?
Also, Etsu.
Do you
Uh,
have a few names for us, Lubangi?
I'm sorry.
Do you have a few names to share with us
Yeah, that's
from
what I
the
say.
Brazzaville
There's
side?
like a Etsu who was there. There was a group, Victoria,
Okay.
which was big, actually, very big. And they used to see, remember Brazzaville and Kinshasa, way before the Europeans came and took over. Um, it was They were like brothers because of the same group of people lived on both
Yeah.
sides. The Bateke, Baumbu, for instance, you've heard of Ngaliema. I don't know if you've heard of Ngaliema. Ngaliema was a king on this side on this, Congo Kinshasa, and also there was his brothers pretty much on the other side. So, and then the Congo as well. So they were like going back and forth. That dynamic stayed even in music. Like culturally, it was already there. And they were exchanging food, fruits, and music. Same people, pretty much. And then when the people like Aduelenga, they were singing, they were listened to in Brazzaville. And Windows, same thing. And Victoria was there. And then Window was also doing what Victoria was doing in Brazzaville. Yeah. And then later on, of course, they had Brazzaville had people like, I don't know. I mean, I would probably say um, Pamelo, for instance, someone like Pamelo Munka.
Yeah,
Gran Pamelo
amazing.
Munka.
Amazing.
Amazing. I
L'argent
mean,
appelle l'argent.
voila, there you go. I mean, people like that. I mean, Pamelo, incredible. I mean, and then of course, way down to Extra Musica,
Yeah.
South.
Roga Roga today. They, whatever they do over there, it's the same thing that is done on this side.
Yeah.
Whatever Roga Roga is doing, it's like, okay, it's the same thing. I mean, I'll tell you, for instance, there was one great composer that came out, Pierre Moutouari. He came out with Misenge. I mean, woo, what a respect, you know. But anyway, the list is long. I mean, I've left some people out, but
Was Papa Noel from Brazzaville or from Kinshasa? We've got a
say that
question.
again.
Papa Noel, was he from Brazzaville or from Kinshasa?
No, Papa Noel is from Kinshasa.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
just want to add something maybe that's important. You see, the bars, the bars are very important on the history of Congolese rumba. So on the side of Leopoldville, you have Silubangi, Air France, you have a lot. But probably the oldest bar was in Brazzaville, Chefion. Uh, it seems, according to historians, that it was there even maybe a couple or 3 years before even Silubangi, which is one of the oldest bars like a Musu, but also on the side of Leopoldville. I think Negro Success, that band is also from Brazzaville. I think Brazzaville has a huge musical tradition. Also, it's the same as Lubangi said.
Yeah, but the difference was that because Kinshasa was bigger,
Mm.
and the attraction was bigger, much larger. And that's the reason why. Now you have to understand also when Brazzaville became a socialist country, they got rid of so-called imperial music or mentality. So they just shut
Mm.
whatever they were doing down. So that's there was a large number of Congolese from Brazzaville that crossed the river and came to Kinshasa because they felt like it was free to express yourself. So Kinshasa became a hub
Right.
for all type of creativity.
Did we mention Franklin Bukaka? I'm not sure
No,
if
I
we
didn't
mentioned.
actually. Frankie Bukaka is also Frankie
Yeah.
Bukaka is, I would say it's like the Aduelenga, the Wendo Colosso of that type. But
Right.
the person who broke the mold was Kale Jeff. Kale Jeff, because of the modern orchestra, he brought in the sax, the
All the
trumpets,
wind
and a
instruments. Yeah.
bigger band. It was a bigger band, just like any band from anywhere in the world. So he
Yeah.
wanted to stand strong, just like
Yeah.
Tino Rossi would stand with his band, just like any band that came out of Cuba or anywhere in the world. So he was the first one who did that, and it was major. It was big. So
Right.
that's the difference in a way.
People are asking where is Bopol from. He appears in many bands.
Where is
Bopol?
Bopolo from? Bopol Mantiamina is from Kinshasa, Congo Kinshasa. But
Okay.
let me say one thing because of Nedule Papa Noel. Uh, his people are also found in Brazzaville.
Yeah.
We do have, I mean, apart from Bakongo, if you going upstream on Congo River, you'll find people like you go to places like Yumbi, uh, Banunu are also found also in Brazzaville. Same people. I mean, if one crosses to another, to Congo, Kinshasa, you will never know because it's the same, they speak the same language. So sometimes they will just cross and then go and they have cousins over here or wife over there. So people like, Banunu and, going up to Bolobo, Yumbi, those areas. And they call them Banalak,
Banalak.
the
Another.
children of the lake. And Papa Noel is from that area.
People are asking Passy Mermont.
Say that again.
Passy?
Passy.
Yes.
Timmermans.
Passy Mermans.
Oui.
I'm not familiar with that name.
I think he's one of the guitar players of Levanto de la Capital, no?
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not familiar with that name. Yeah.
One other thing about Brasa that is interesting is Lubangi just said that Brasa wasn't as big musically because Kinshasa was bigger, right, as a city. But also probably me had a musical scene, a big musical scene. It seems, for all we know, there are photos and there are several chronics. But I think another reason was because of the studio, the labels, the record labels. All the record labels were in Kinshasa,
Right.
and so Kinshasa had this kind of music power
Right.
that Brazzaville didn't have. But still, they were moving around because some bands from Leopoldville were playing one night in Brazzaville. It's just 20 minutes, 25 minutes on the boat.
Yeah. No, thank you both for this. This is very, very important to highlight as well. And just for the people watching us, this is actually one of the things that is shown in the movie as well how Kinshasa had such a strong attraction for musicians from anywhere in Africa. Everybody wanted to be there to just learn and just go outside in nightclubs and experience the bars you've mentioned, because the nightlife was so vivid, so lively, that musicians wanted to be in Kinshasa, then Leopoldville, to learn about music and really feel all the vibes that they could get from there. We've got another question. Okay. Can you share some figures about the music industry back then and some figures about the biggest artists such as Franco, Taboulé, Grand Calais, just to have an idea of scale?
Well, if I can give you an idea, uh, Calais was, I can say, big in terms of popularity, not just in Kinshasa, Brazzaville as well, and throughout Africa. And remember, this is uh, a guy that came from Europe. This is he was there for months, a month. I'm sorry, performing, and he was acclaimed. When he came back with his band, African Jazz, it was like he came from Mars. Okay, he was huge. I mean, there were people performing, but Calais just took over, and people had the ability to buy discs back then. The buying power was there. So the record labels, the owner of record labels made some money selling their records. So that's how people like Calais were able to afford, cars back then, if I can say. Now, Franco, I'll tell you, Franco was big because he was playing à la cité, city in Kinshasa. He was so popular. He had European friends, and people don't know that Franco was given an apartment in downtown Kinshasa. He was living in a nice and lavish apartment already because of his European friends who felt like they understood what he was doing. He was very popular. Now, some of them were hired by local stores, companies to help them with marketing. So they were making, money back then. But it wasn't yet in so many of them, in their minds to start buying houses and buildings. Most of them were just renting. It was the thing of, it was a thing back then, just rent a house, but they wanted to drive a car or a Vespa, which was like a motorbike back then. So it was a thing. Yep.
Alain,
I,
do you have a few
I
figures
can
for
add a
us?
little bit on that just to kind of, I think for Franco, for example, we know that the power, the reach of his music was so big. And we have this on the film that Simaro tells an anecdote on the film that he arrives to Kenya and some three ladies talk to him in Lingala. This is on the late 60s, early 70s. And Simaro says, "Oh, you are from Congo, you speak Lingala." And they tell him, "No, we actually learn Lingala through your songs." So that's already like a huge
Amazing.
statement of the reach of the music of Franco Luambo, no? And then you have several stories that have come to light through the manager of Franco, Mansensa, about concerts in stadiums where nobody fitted. It was crowded everywhere, you know. And then the people were, when Franco started to play the seven,
Mm-hmm.
people will come down from the tribunes. They will knock down the fences to come close to him, to feel that power of the guitar, you know.
Yeah.
So you're talking about, in the case of Franco, a continental star, no doubt, with a huge ring. Uh, in terms of sales, I think there was a big economic power in the Congolese, in Kinshasa. They were buying records from their own stars every week, 2 weeks. Yeah, it was like not like buying a newspaper, but they were buying records.
Right.
It's not one record a month, no, at least 4 or 5, because it was a thing to do, and it was also an identity, I believe, action. You know, it was to reaffirm my own identity through my own music. Uh, so I remember I talked with one of the technicians of the factory of the vinyl factory of Berkiskia Mangana, the leader of Orchestre BV, that also was part of the OK Jazz. He was a producer, a musical producer, and he had also a vinyl factory. And he was telling me, the technician, and I have this on video recorded, that they were selling thousands of records per week. They were producing thousands of
Wow.
records. So it was a business, huh? It was a business. It was a, there is no doubt it's a business. And then also, in the case of Tabule, there is a famous video that you can probably find it in Facebook, when you see Tabule preparing for his 1970 concert. He's the first African to play in the Olympia in Paris. And you see him on this video made by French TV. There is a French reporter, I believe, who travels to Kinshasa. At that time, it's Kinshasa already, to interview Tabule. And you see that huge crowd surrounding Tabule for a rehearsal. So the scope, the size is probably way bigger than we imagine, you know?
Let me just add two things. I will say that I remember, being working with Kenyans, and there was a Kenyan who was there the day Franco came to Kenya to perform. He said when Franco came, school was off. Nobody, they went to try. The school was. He said we went to the airport. We wanted to see Franco. We wanted to to shake his hand. He said there were thousands of people who lined up and trying to see Franco.
Wow.
Um, then he said he talked about when the fence or maybe the wall, I think of the stadium, that fell, and there was people were injured. I don't know if they died, but he told me it was amazing. He was actually surprised to see me being like, "Oh, really? Like you didn't know this?" I'm like, he thought it was such a big news that we needed to know this, but that's how big Franco was.
Hmm.
Remember, Franco as a band leader,
Hmm.
when he was touring, he had his own instruments, he had his own sound system, he had his own bus, a coach.
Hmm.
Okay, back then. So when he went to perform in Kikwiti, they would trucks will bring all the instrument, the sound system, and his musicians
Amazing.
will be on the coach, a bus that will take
This
them
is
there.
amazing.
And I remember I went to school next to his house in Limete, when I was younger. I used to see his house. I mean, it was right there next to my school. And all these buses were outside, like well furnished. I'm telling you, they were making money. Another
Mm.
thing is, I remember there was a band called uh, Sosoliso.
So sorry.
Sosoliso, I remember when they performed in some places in Matonge, the church wall fell off. This is Kinshasa.
Wow.
That week, they sold in 1 week 60,000 records. I remember that.
Wow.
It was a newspaper. This is just to tell you how much people were consuming.
Yeah.
And lastly, I will talk about Dr. Nico.
Mm.
Dr. Nico went to perform in Sierra Leone. He was big and huge out there, Franco too. But Dr. Nico came out there because of his guitar playing.
Mm.
They stopped him. They wanted to see what he was hiding in his guitar, inside of his guitar. He was a legendary guitar player in Sierra Leone. You know, they said your guitar is not a regular guitar. It talks. We want to see what's inside.
Mm.
See, that's how big those guys were.
I want to tell you two things on that because it is bringing memories. Two things. The first one is Jimmy Cliff, the famous
Mm.
reggae musician.
Yeah.
He traveled, he went to Kinshasa. I have
Wow.
photos of him performing on the Palais du Congrès, just on the stairs. And Manda Chewa, who is in the film, this big musical researcher from Congolese Rumba from Congo, tells me that he interviews Jimmy Cliff. He talks to him, and Jimmy Cliff tells him, he said that these are the real wizards of the guitar. After listening to the Congolese playing guitar. And another anecdote is that you see, we call Nicolas Casanda Dr. Nico, right? There are many stories about how that doctor came to be.
Mm.
One is that it came to be during the 1960 trip of the African Jazz to Brussels. This story says, we have been able to verify it, but is what it says. A radio host in one of the interviews that the band gave in Europe told to Nico, one of the European radio hosts, he said, Nico, but you handle a guitar like a doctor, like an instrument. And so it came like Dr. Nico. And then there are other stories, no? But in that trip of the African Jazz to Brussels in 1960, it didn't last 1 month. It lasted 3 months. They performed in the Netherlands, France, in Belgium. They played more than 70 concerts. They were hired by one of the biggest department stores, a kind of a Walmart, a Costco of that time in Belgium called Galerie de la Bourse, the most famous department store of that time, to play every week, every day for their audience in the store. The African Jazz did that. On top of that, the African Jazz was hired by the Standard Club de Liège in Brussels to play for their anniversary party. They were playing even with the biggest musical stars of that time in Europe. All of this has been reported in newspapers of that time. It's just that we do not have open access to this information. But when we talk about that trip of the African Jazz to Europe, we just stay on the table ronde, the concerts of Hotel Plaza. It's way bigger than that. They basically, if you want to call it, conquer Europe. They had fans following them from city to city. Brazos and Petit Pierre told me that. So it's big. It's big.
Thank you both for this. That was just amazing. If you just allow me to quickly move forward in the presentation, I would like to ask a technical question now. So, this is an image from the film, and I want you to explain to us what Mi Solo guitar is.
That's a tough question. Huh?
Well,
So, from
go.
my understanding, I'm not a musician, but the Mi Solo guitar is a very sui generis, particular, and complex third guitar. You see, in Western rock music, we have the solo guitar and the rhythm guitar, right? And in simple terms, the rhythm guitar plays a pattern in the background, and the solo guitar plays a special melody on top of the pattern that the
Right,
rhythm guitar is playing.
right.
Well, the Mi Solo guitar is a third guitar that
Mm,
plays a looping pattern in between the rhythm guitar and the solo guitar. It's a looping
right,
pattern that cannot opaque, cannot cross into the rhythm guitar and cannot cross into the solo guitar. It has to fit exactly in the middle so that three
right.
guitars can shine. What do you think, Lubangi?
That's exactly that. It's a third guitar that finds its place between the rhythm guitar and the solo guitar. Now, the solo, there's this thing that you find in Congolese music that they call seben. Okay, seben is designed to take you to trance. Transport you. You know, whether you like it or not, seben can make you forget your problems. Seben. Now, between seben and rhythm guitar, that's where there is mi solo. So mi solo changes according to how good the solo guitar is. But you will never cross the border, and then never be confused. So there is, if there is a mi solo, there like is wherever there is mi solo, there is no uh, empty space. It's filled with a seven-like guitar and rhythmic guitar like, okay, and that's something that the Congolese came up with, and that's a contribution to music
It
on
is.
this planet. The Congolese came out with this, and this is what I personally think it's. Those guys are geniuses. It's only someone with an independent mind that can do such a thing. If you are not independent, you will not. That's creativity right there.
Yeah.
Can politicians do this in politics? I'm just saying. So if they can do this, that means we can see it, we can live it. But music wise, these guys, they have pushed music to a level. Franco said it one day in an interview. He said, people are behind when it comes to our music. One day they will wake up to it and then realize that we are 5 times faster than the rest of the world. That's what Franco said. And that caught my attention. And one day I went back and I said, I was listening to Franco's Makambo Ezali Minene. Makambo Ezali Minene, Makambo Ezali Buro. Madilu did sing that song.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just listening to the guitar. It woke me up. That's when I said to myself, oh my God, these guys, they have done something that a lot of people are not aware of. Today you play Makambo Ezali Minene as if, you play it, it's as relevant today as it was when it came out in the early 80s. So,
I just want to add something, if possible. Lubangi just said something that probably is one of the most beautiful definitions of seven. He just said, seven makes you forget all your problems. It puts you in a state of trance. And that's so true.
This is true.
Me, personally, I want to live on a permanent state of seven.
I think there's one documentary I watched where I think it was the musician Brazos who was saying Seben can be called envoûtement, like a spell.
Yeah.
In French. That's what he said. He was talking about Seben, but he was saying like I would look at Franco and then he would wink at me and we would kick off the Seben, which is what they called envoûtement. So this is very true with what you both are saying about forgetting who you are, just going in that trance. Absolutely. And enjoying the moment. Well, thank you both for this technical part of the discussion. I would like us to continue the discussion on the influence of Congolese music outside of the Francophone sphere, because we've talked about Africa as a continent being very influenced by Franco and other great musicians from Congo. But now I would like us to talk about the influence of Congolese music when it reaches outside Francophone sphere, so Lusophone world as well as Anglophone world. Can we just have a comment about what you guys think, and also just ideas and thoughts on how it traveled differently in those different language spaces?
Now, I can take maybe maybe the most modern part. I think we can really create us on on Papa Wemba, all of that, and even before. But just for the early part, we know that Dr. Nico plays some concerts in USA, for example, right? Um, we know that some people in the United States knew the music of Franco also. They weren't that big, you know. For sure, they were big in Europe. We have many concerts of Franco all over Europe, not only in France, Netherlands, in many countries. So in Europe, I think Franco was big. Grand Calais, Grand Calais made many trips after the Table Ronde trip in 1960 to record in Europe and to sell. He actually saw so much of a business that he decided to create his own label, Surbum Africanas. And he created it because he saw there was an audience in Europe. So I think it had a big reach in Europe, at least. In North America, for Franco, for Gran Calais, for Dr. Nico, it was a little bit harder, but it was getting there. I think that the question will be, and this is something very interesting to talk about, why this classic, let's say, quote unquote, Congolese rumba, right, never made it like massively, like, for example, like reggae, right? Uh, what do you think, Lubangi?
Well, remember, Congo as a country was a very strategic country. If you understand the political dynamic of the planet back then and the role Congo played, you understand why that music did not make it worldwide like reggae, for instance, because reggae came out really late compared to what the rumba, Congolese rumba, started. Remember World War II. After World War II, uh, the world was divided. Okay, 1945, the world was completely divided. The world of today is not the world of back then. And when the world was divided, you had, let's say, the Soviet Union uh, influence in Africa. So that alone control already how much music people were listening to.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Now Belgium was a it was and it still is a very small country, but in terms of its influence, Belgium was huge. Belgium was big in people's mind. I mean, colossal. Now, Belgium's mentality, they didn't want Congolese to uh, ascend to a certain level. They were very insecure. They wanted the world. I mean, it was also part of the agreements, treaties. If you want to do business in Congo, you have to go through Belgium. You cannot go through any other country, not even France. So the music in Congo, they wanted to keep it there, right there. They didn't want the Congolese to have an influence that they were going to lose
Right.
control of these Congolese. Look at what reggae did. You see, reggae went boom, completely global. And reggae was, vehicle that carries this message. The people like Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, they were able to speak of the issues of the world,
Yeah.
you know. And you have to remember that the British, not the government, I'm saying, free British people who were behind this, and they liked it. Okay, and these people, they were part of the movement in the '60s of
Yeah.
being free, the hippies and whatnot. So someone like Bob Marley reminded them or brought a different. I mean, in addition to what they were looking for, they wanted to smoke, and then Bob Marley he was smoking. Bob Marley had his locks, so that look went along with the hippies, and they wanted it. Okay, so the person who was in charge of the label that put Bob Marley out, fell in love with that whole idea, and then they were behind it. He was a free man. He was rich, so he did
Right.
that. Whereas the Congolese, they didn't want. I mean, not they didn't want, but they wanted to be civilized.
Right.
Okay, so they fell in the category of people who were respecting the Westerners.
Mm.
Okay, so it was a little bit problematic. Now, the 70s, that's really when it should have taken off.
Yeah.
Mobutu came out with authenticity.
Mm.
Okay, it was a movement, and then the music. Mobutu was a pro music because he
Mm.
wanted people to, he said it himself. You know, happier people are those who dance and listen to their own music. He said it.
Mm.
So it was part of his politics. Let them
Right.
be happy. Let them play music.
Mm.
Okay, remember, Franco was a member of Mobutu's political party.
Yeah.
He was the enemy,
Yeah.
principal enemy. Now, people who wanted Mobutu out, it didn't start yesterday. This started long time ago. So the music was putting Congo and its leader, Mobutu, up front. So by pushing the Congolese music down, it was also a way of pushing Mobutu down. I'll tell you, in 1974, Mobutu trying to put his head out there so the world will know. And he wanted to connect with the African American communities. Uh, he sponsored Ali and George Foreman's fight in Kinshasa,
Mm.
1974.
Mm.
Back then the money was strong.
Yeah.
One Zaire was equal to $2.
$2. Yeah.
Can you imagine? Now, the Franco, they were doing their thing. And then Yuma Sekela and then his friends, Yuma Sekela, he's a former. He is no longer alive.
Mm.
He's a South African musician who used to come to Congo and then he loved Franco very much. So at some point he lived in Kinshasa. Remember, in Kinshasa, there are so many people that passed by. William Makeba, Yuma Sekela, Manu Dibango, Ebu Alotin. We could go on and on and on and on. Now, they came out with the idea of why just do the fight? Because Kinshasa is such a capital, music capital of Africa back then.
Yeah.
How about if we do this connection of the Americans, meaning from Cuba all the way up to the United States, to come and perform with the Africans? And that was known as Zaire 74.
Mm.
So it was supposed to happen, I think, a day before the fight.
Yeah.
But George Foreman had a cut, so they had to push it like a few months. But the festival, because of the artists were already there, so they had to have the festival. It was a huge festival when pretty much
Yeah.
anybody was
Invited to play. There were so many
everybody
groups.
they were there.
Yeah.
They performed alongside Abeti, Franco, Tabule, all of them. And then throughout Kinshasa, there were young musicians such as Kanda Boyman back then. They performed in Kinshasa, in à la Cité, in all these places. They were performing there. Guess what? Mobutu was heavily criticized. Politics. Because they want him down. They say this is terrible. That's a poor country. How dare you do this? Your own people, blah, 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 blah. So they didn't want to see these connections. They didn't want to help this music to be known.
Oh.
It was not carried. I mean, there was something if you were there. So, in a way, Mobutu didn't care. He closed his borders. He said, if they don't want us out there, we will play our music within Africa and then within Zaire. In a way, it did not help. There was no promotion. There was none. The promotion was with people like King Sunny Ade in Nigeria, and then Kuti. Fela Kuti came back from America. He was doing the Afrobeat. So Fela and all these people, because of what they were singing, they got more exposure with big labels and big money. And it was kind of hard for you to, living in America, to hear Congolese music.
Yeah.
If it wasn't Voice of America, it was kind of hard for you to listen to it. So Voice of America, I think that's what was playing. People like Roger Guifoli, Georges Collinet, uh, they were using. Today you can listen to Georges Collinet with Afro pop. You know, he's there. So they are the ones that in America were playing this music. Some say they were used. The Congolese music were being used for propaganda of the West. Some people say that. But anyway, the Congolese did not get that exposure with big labels and big money. They did not.
Yeah.
Uh, I want to add something. You see, me and Lubangi, we talk a lot. We have talked a lot about, but we have never talked about this in particular. And I agree with his point 100%. And it's a very interesting point. And if you just for 1 minute think about the size of Zaire 74 concert, James Brown at the peak of his glory,
Yes.
with all his orchestra, have Miriam Makeba also. And you have the biggest salsa orchestra that ever existed in this planet, the Fania All-Stars, with all the stars. They were there. You realize the economical power, energy, effort that unite all of these people. And there are other bands that I'm not mentioning. They were all there in this kind of homage to the motherland, to Africa, musically, for sure for the fight also. And so the natural outcome of something of that size is logically will be that Franco will explode after that. And Tabule will explode. Because Franco and Tabule were really big at that time, not Calais. Calais, African jazz was gone, Nico was doing his own thing. But Tabule and Franco, they could have exploded, but they didn't. So for me, that's an evidence that Lubangi is right when he says that the optics of how they was seen from outside somehow didn't help the rise, right? The popularization of the music of Franco, I think he's completely right,
And I'm not sure if it's related as well, but there was also something going on as well, even with the football team, I think, at the time. So I think 1974 was a very, very important year. Just quickly for the audience, there is actually on Spotify an amazing playlist where you can listen to some of the artists that were performing at the festival. So if you see this cover, that's why I've put back my screen on. If you see this cover on Spotify, this is actually the official playlist of some of the acts that were played during that festival.
And I wanted to say one thing.
Sure.
Remember, like Alain said, it was a huge festival. Carlos Santana, today people talk of, he was there. Okay? Tito Puente was there. The Fania All Stars. Okay? But I want to say that it was filmed professionally, recorded professionally. Do you know when this thing came out? I'm asking you, Marcy. Do you
I don't know. I don't know when it came out. The videos.
The film, everything.
No, I have no idea.
It was filmed in 1974. Nobody saw it. Nobody heard of it. People were born, people born after 74, they did not even know that such a thing took place. It came out the year Mobutu was ousted, 1997.
Wow.
Tell me that's coincidence.
That is bad.
Tell me that's coincidence.
I want to add there, Lubangi is right. It came in a movie called When We Were
When we
Kings
were kings.
that won an Oscar, actually.
Yes.
Yeah, and the editor of When We Were King, Jeffrey Kusama Hinte, was in touch with me to allow me to use some of those images that are in the Rumba Kings,
Right.
the Franco concerts. I just want to add something that is a little bit delicate, but you see, uh, a lot of people gravitate immediately to criticizing uh, Mobutu in a kind of a block. Like Mobutu is bad. I'm not going to defend Mobutu. I'm not going to enter in those politics. But I would like to say that sometimes it's interesting to see everything in a different moment. You know, for music, was really Mobutu bad for music? Why? You know, uh, can you put together what he did for music, what he did for the economy? Those things don't belong together. Those are two different things. So it's important to actually have an informed opinion of what was the influence of Mobutu on the culture of Congo, you know, and really why is that is your opinion. That's more interesting than just to see it all as bad. So I'm not saying it's positive, but I'm saying you need to do your own research and understand every angle of the government of Mobutu, you know, because Zaire 74, as much as you can criticize the spending of money, he spent a lot of money, he gave a lot of exposure of Congo. And look, that image of Franco playing there with his red t-shirt is priceless in the Rumba Kings.
Yeah.
Because we're
Yeah.
seeing Franco at the peak of his moment.
Yeah,
You
I'll
know?
try and
And
find
it's
it.
because of Zaire 74, you know.
I'll try and find it as you guys continue to speak and
Yeah. I
and share
just,
with
you
us
know,
your ideas. I'll try and find the
so
Franco video.
so you know that Mobutu was, the economy was at its peak. One Zaire, Mobutu, made this reform. Created a new money, which was called Zaire. It was a movement, 3Z, I think, or 3Z, as the British will say. So Z as Zaire, Z as money, Z as the river. Um, so back then, yeah, one Zaire was $2, and he was pushing this philosophy of his to be proud of his African heritage. That's what authenticity was about. So
Right.
the music was an evidence that these people are actually doing it. Remember, the Belgians left. Congo did not even have more than 10 university graduates. And they had been there for 85 years. How can you not
Yeah.
have university graduates? So boom, when the country became Zaire, it renamed itself because they felt like Congo was such a bad omen. It's like we have to get rid of this name because there were wars every time and this. So we gotta it's a renaissance. We gotta come out clean and new with a new
Yeah.
image. That's what Zaire was about, with a new philosophy.
Right.
And guess who was the soundtrack of that movement?
Franco was.
Luambo Macchiati.
He was.
He was the soundtrack of that, and the tablet was this, if I can say, this runner, free runner that he would run left, he would run right, so that's how he was able. He just came back from Olympia. I mean, things were really happening. Now, culturally, some cultural engineers knew already if this thing is published freely, and the whole world, especially the African world, finds out, it's going to help Congolese. But more, rather than helping Congolese, we want to shut them down so we can shut Mobutu down.
Yeah.
That's what happened. And I was there when the movie came out, When We Were Kings. Actually, it was When We Were Kings, 1997, and then probably the same year or maybe the year after, Soul Power. Soul Power, that's James Brown. They're showing James Brown in Kinshasa. Can you imagine? James Brown was like this big megastar in the
Yeah.
70s, all the way down to 80s. That movie was never out. James Brown in Africa, connecting with the Africans, with his own roots. Why not put it out there? They waited in 1997. Mobutu was out, dead in Morocco. Bam! The movie came out. I went to see it. I remember. It was actually the Fugees, Wycliffe Jean, Lauryn Hill, and Pratt that I think they made some songs or soundtrack for the movie. And when it first came out, they actually made some statements about that.
Yeah.
So some of us who follow things carefully, we knew already there was something wrong. Of course, we did some research, and then I was able to uh, do programs with the filmmaker who passed away already a few years back. He's Mazeless. So I had some questions. I wanted to talk to him, but of course, then I realized that Mobutu was perceived as a capitalist, and the whole crew and the whole people, they were like socialists, though they were Americans, but they didn't like Mobutu. Oh, he killed Lumumba. We're not gonna do anything for him until he goes away. And that's pretty
Right.
much what I'm not gonna say damaged, but did not help the promotion
Trend
of
of
Congolese
Congolese
Rumba.
music. Right. Well, thank you both for explaining a bit of that political, I think, background that also affected the natural path of Congolese music, because that's definitely important to also highlight for the audience. I think from my side, I probably only have a couple more questions before I check quickly if anyone else has further questions for you two. The first one is about Congo Square. Can we briefly talk about Congo Square, why it's called Congo Square, and whether there's actually a connection with Congo and its people?
I can take that one, at least the beginning, because it's a topic that is, I have a lot of love for that topic because it was supposed to be on the film, but it didn't make it because it would have made the film too long. So for the film, we interview a scholar from New Orleans because Congo Square is located in New Orleans in a park that now is called the Louis Armstrong Park, right? And so this scholar told us that probably in the late 1800s, more or less a little bit before the late 1800s, some of the African population that was kidnapped in this horrible episode of a transatlantic trade and were taken forcefully to work in the United States.
Right.
On the Sundays, they had a free moment to go and meet together, right? To feel free by doing their own music. And so they will meet together with drums and other African instruments in this square, right? That now is Louis Armstrong Park. It was a big empty space. And so these meetings became famous. And so why it went to be called Congo Square? So this scholar is a lady called Freddie Williams Evans who wrote a book about it. She tells me that it's called Congo Square because at some point in the moment of the life of this square, of these meetings, these gatherings, these musical gatherings, most of the people that were there were from the Congo region, meaning the both Congos right now and a little bit of Angola, the Congo with K, they call it Congos with a K. And so it was called Congo Square because most of the people performing, dancing, engaging into some sort of temporary freedom, right, were from Congo. And what happened there? Why is it important? Well, what happened in Congo Square musically is super important because the seeds, the musical seeds of what later will become jazz
Right.
were born in Congo Square. And there is no doubt about it. Winston Marsalis has spoke about this many times, meaning we cannot say that jazz was born in Congo Square because that's a long stretch, but the seeds of what later becomes jazz were planted there in those musical gatherings that were completely African that were
Right.
happening in Congo Square.
Right. Lubangi, do you want to share with us some thoughts on this? You're on mute. Your microphone is on mute. We can't hear you.
Can
There
you
you
hear
go.
me now?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know what happened. Yeah. uh, it's important to know where Congo Square is located. Congo Square is, of course, in America, United States, in New Orleans. Okay. And then back then, remember, New Orleans was uh, owned by the French at some point, and then they lost it.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of, like Alain said, I don't want to go back there, but it was a square or a plaza, a place where people would come and jam. Okay, it was they were expressing themselves, dancing and playing the drums. Remember, a drum, the way they played it back then, it was a new thing that the Africans created, but they brought the drums with them. If they didn't bring the drum as a luggage, but it was in their mind. So they were able to create this instrument that they've used. So
Right.
that square was a jam session where people would come in. There were those who would play the drums, those who would dance,
Right.
and those who would just sing and shout. So it was a place where people start gathering.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you go today there in New Orleans, you'll still find that spot.
Right.
And people from Haiti used to come there. If they left Haiti, and they'll go there uh, and mingle with those who were there. And it became creolized in a way.
Right.
And that's where spiritual people evolved also from there.
Right.
And all because jazz evolved also from there, because this spirit of a free expression, like Alan say, the seed was planted. So do you know how many people left that square and then went uh, toward north with the same spirit of being free and
Yeah.
expressing
Yeah.
yourself? So very, very important. That's what Congo Square is. And today, you can still go and visit, and there are plenty of festivals that take place around there.
Right. Well, thank you both for this. I've got one more question. Hopefully, it's an easy one for you too. Very specific one. There's two songs of Franco that are connected, Mamou and Mario. Have those people actually existed in Franco's life?
I don't know. I don't know a lot, so I will just tell the little truth that I know about Mario, because this is a complex topic. So Mansensa, the manager of Franco, I asked him the question directly. I asked him, Mario existed as a person, yes or no? And I have him on record, but I didn't use it on the film, and he tells me, yes, Alan. Mario was a friend of ours. I know who is Mario. I'm not going to tell you. I know. I'm Franco knew, and it was a guy who was living out of the money of a lady, his
Yeah.
couple. He was
Right.
not doing anything, he was using her money. And
Right.
Franco didn't like that. And Franco told me that. To be Mansensa told me, he told me, Franco was very straight, like he will tell you things in your face. He wasn't scared. So he told this Mario, that scene, what you're doing is not right. You have to stop. So Mansensa told me when Franco realized that Mario didn't even care about what he told him, he made a song.
Right. I love
Yep,
that.
I will. I will second that. Mario was a real person,
Right.
uh, but the name was not Mario. Remember, this is
Mm-hmm.
a culture of Mwakela.
Right.
You know, you use a metaphor to say certain things, and you change things around. So Mario was a real person. So was Mamu.
Right.
Mamu was also a real person. Beautiful songs, by the way.
Oh, yes.
See,
Both
the
of them,
funny
yeah.
thing about Congolese, they will dance to it. And then it's like, were they dancing because of the lyrics or because of the rhythm? It was because of the rhythm, you know. So whatever Franco was singing to them, it was just joy. Even the funny thing is, Franco is singing about somebody who's dead.
Mm.
People are still dancing to a part. I mean, it's like, are you listening to what Sir Franco is saying? Nope. You know, whatever Franco did. I remember I was in Brazzaville. Uh, I was in Brazzaville, and then after we were tired, my sister and I, my older
Yeah.
sister, Bernadette, he passed away, by the way, but it was my dear sister. So we were in Brazzaville, sitting there with my sister, and then she was like, "Oh, let's go in and have something to drink." Guess what they were playing? They were playing Franco's song, who was it was a campaign song for Mobutu.
Oh yeah.
Mobutu was running again to of course to remain president. So it was a Yabiso candidat.
Candidat Nabiso.
Yeah,
Calidad aviso.
yeah, Yabiso candidat.
Mobutu
Mobutu says
Sese.
that song.
Yeah.
I
Beautiful
mean,
song.
I was sitting there. People were dancing to the song in Brazzaville. You see,
Wow.
they were dancing Rumba. And I told my sister, I'm like, oh, something's wrong with them. They're not listening to the
To the
lyrics.
lyrics.
Then she's like, oh my God. Then I went back. I really, of course, many years after, I realized we did the same thing. When Franco was
Mm.
like crying, Boule, this woman who was Franco's sponsors, one of
Mm.
Franco's sponsors, here they are singing this song. People are dancing to it at parties, and I mean, it's unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the
I
power
just
of
want to
music.
add, and I kind of want to ask Lubangi, but Franco has a huge sense of humor, right?
Oh, big time. A huge, huge one. Franco, Franco was, I think it was his way of getting rid of awkward moment.
Mm.
Franco never wanted to have an awkward moment. He
Mm-hmm.
wanted to be in charge every time.
Yeah.
Okay, if he didn't have the answer, you find somebody who had the answer. So if there was like an awkward moment coming, he would sense it. He would throw in a joke, and everybody would laugh. It was his way of breaking the ice and making people feel welcome, and just creating this ambiance, what they used to call.
Because even in some of the lyrics, for example, in Matata Jamwasi, when he says, you can see that he's making fun. He's making fun of himself. He says, "We men," in that song Matata Jamwasi, he says, "We men, we work for women, but we use the same pants the whole year."
He
That's fun.
says that. He
And then
does.
Bomba Bomba Mave, even the name is crazy. Bomba Bomba Mave. And then Locater, where he says, I'm going to take this guy who is living in the house with karate.
Right.
No,
Yes, that's him. That's him. Franco comes out of that culture, street culture. It was unbelievable. This man, he would. I mean, he had songs that you listen to, to them, and then you will laugh, crack laughing. I remember way back in the days. A friend who grew up in America. Of course, grew up in America. Then, so English was like his first language. Then, of course, went to Kinshasa, lived there for a long time. Then he started understanding Lingala. He looked at me and said, "My goodness, man, American singers don't sing this." I'm like, "What do you mean? Like, this is so sophisticated." Over there, just like, "I love you, baby. It's like this guy is going deeper and deeper. I'm like, yes, it's unbelievable. Then he said, is there a way you can translate this? I'm like, I don't think it's gonna work. So that's when I knew. I'm like, okay, wow, I need to listen to these American songs. I mean, beautiful songs,
Mm-hmm.
but it was more like everything was like beautiful fantasy, back then.
Right.
But Franco, man, no, yeah.
I think people say that you should learn English to read Hemingway. You should learn Russian to read Dostoevsky. You should learn Spanish to read Garcia Marquez. But I think you should learn Lingala to listen to Franco.
That's a
I
good one.
agree. I agree. Everyone should. I hope everyone is taking something out of this discussion. I'm just gonna check if anyone's got any specific questions. I'm going through my notes as well, just to see if there's anything else I think we should add. There's so many things, obviously, but it could last hours and hours. Um, oh yeah, there was one comment that you made. If you could just quickly make the same comment for this discussion as well this week, Lubangi, on Rumba Rock, who was
Yeah.
invented by Papa Wemba. If you just quickly touch on this one before we close out the discussion.
Oh, okay. Well, I depends on your questions. I depend on your questions. I depends on the public's questions. So because I don't just start, you know, talking about topics. But anyway, uh, the what we talked about last time was Roomba had its subcategories of
Yes.
Roomba. By the way, Roomba does not mean Congolese music.
Mm-hmm.
Period. No,
Yeah. Yeah.
Rumba is a type of music,
Yeah.
Congolese music. There are some others also. All right. Now, when third generation, meaning Papa Wemba, his generation,
Mm-hmm.
they came out with Kavasha.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is Zaiko. Um, back then it was also Tuzaina, Simba, just to name a few. Those
Mm-hmm.
groups, they came up with third generation, a different way of playing that music. The seven was much more speedy than what you will get from the classic rumba, Congo or rumba or demba or fiesta. Now, because of Papa Wemba, their generation, they were like younger compared to Franco.
Yeah.
Uh, they did not allow them, meaning culturally, they were not allowed to hang out with girlfriends.
Yeah.
If they have a party, if they see a young woman dancing on the dance floor with the guy, it was terrible,
Mm-hmm.
disrespectful. So if you had to dance, you had to dance. You had to be,
With the
you had
distance.
to keep your social distance.
Like
You know
COVID,
what I
like
mean?
COVID.
Like COVID. That's it was that type of party was allowed. So you couldn't dance Dr. Nico's music. Sansa Zomina Mi Ballet. You needed a partner to dance that type of music.
Yeah.
To dance, Calais music. Uh, para Fivio, you needed a
Mm.
partner.
Yeah.
So with Zyko, it's like they can allow us to do that. Guess what? We're gonna play music that will allow us to dance freely.
Mm.
That's what Kavasha was about.
Mm.
Mm.
They were playing the drum, ba 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 ba, and that drum was known as Masini Yakauka. It
Mm.
was invented by Mary Jonge Kereme. There's a story about that, but I'm not gonna get into that.
Yeah.
So Kauka is an area where they all grew up pretty much.
Yeah.
But Masini means machine.
Mm.
That's
Mm.
Masini Yakauka. Now, that's what accompanied Kavasha. The
Mm-hmm.
dance, you'll dance, with your shoulders and all of that. Papa Wemba left Zaiko and wanted, they created Isifi, Yoka Lokole, and
Mm.
Papa Wemba's celebrity status was falling down,
Mm.
falling down. His friends came together and helped him put together a band. He became a solo artist. That's what is known as Viva la Musica. Viva
Right.
la Musica propelled Papa Wemba to stardom again. Okay, he had helps from so many friends,
Mm-hmm.
and he had a guitarist who was part of Viva la Musica.
Right.
His name was Bamundele Rigo Star. Rigo was experimenting with Papa Wemba. You know, they did a song like I forgot the title. Le, 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 le. You know that song. Lelona light lindoto. I mean, that was something new. And Ringo Starr was, you know, experimenting with rock guitars and things of that nature. So Papa Wemba was allowing all of this. He did well. But Zyko was killing it. Zyko was killing. Papa Wemba will come with a song and then Zyko would just take over, you know. And what happened was in the early 80s, Papa Wemba went to Europe. And at that time, people like Kanda Bongo Man and Rigo Starr were in Europe experimenting a new sound, which was
Right.
known as Sukus. You know, Kanda Bongo Man and
Yeah.
Rigo Starr. But Papa Wemba worked with Rigo Starr.
Mm-hmm.
And then he came out with a new sound that he called Rumba Rock. Rumba because of course, the Congolese Rumba, and rock because the rockers, when they were playing, they were just like bouncing up and down and moving their head. They weren't dancing. We can't rock and roll. You can't dance with the woman
Yeah.
romancing like
Yeah. Yeah.
the Khaled Jeff were doing.
Yeah.
So Papa Wemba is very creative. He put those two terms together. He called it Rumba Rock. So when you play Rumba, when you dance to Rumba Rock, you can dance with the woman but not touching the woman, or the woman not touching the man. However, you need to dress up and present your clothing,
Yeah.
present yourself differently with that type of music. And that's how Rumba Rock took off in the 80s. And the album that really introduced Rumba Rock to the world was Santa, that album. Songs like Matebu, you
Yeah.
know. And of course, Papa Wemba kept playing Rumba Rock for a while. But then it went down in the early 90s.
Right.
Yeah. The last of them to really perform Rumba Rock, I think it was Modogo, who was not a real musician, but he was Papa Wemba's friend. You have people like Stino, uh, Redi Amisi, Gloria Tucadio. You know, people like that. They pushed it. But of course, Sukus took over in the 80s.
Yeah.
And the Zyko came back with all kinds of dance moves and music. And what we know. And then what did we find out? Papa Wemba went back. Wenge Musica also, we should say, in the 80s. You know, they
Yeah.
came very strong. Kofi Olomide came with the Chacho. I mean, Papa Wemba needed to do something. So
Yeah.
he was touching a little bit of here, a little bit over there. So that's pretty much what I can say.
Thank you
One
so
little
much
thing
for
that is
that.
one little thing that is funny to add, and it relates to the Zaire 74, is that the name of that band of Papa Wemba, Viva la Música,
Yes.
he took it from Zaire 74 because Papa Wemba was in that concert and he saw the leader of the Fania All Stars, the Salsa Orchestra, which was Johnny Pacheco. He saw him screaming after every song, Viva la Música! And he decided to call his band in a kind of a homage,
Right.
to that ambiance, Viva la Música.
Amazing. I love these comments because the conversation is just so organic. I was just quickly checking if any further questions were raised. I can't see any additional questions raised in the chat, but I just wanted to really thank everyone for all of their contributions. I've seen people sharing memories of taking pictures with Simaro, with Franco, of remembering concerts in Kenya. That's just amazing. You guys are lucky. I'm not lucky enough to have met any of them, but I connect with them through music. So that's what's amazing. Alan, Lubangi, do you have any final comments for us?
Final comment. Are you telling me it's over? It's finished?
I was just going through the questions. I could ask you
Oh my
hundreds of
goodness,
more
it was so
questions, but
fast.
I can ask you like hundreds more questions, but I was just wanting to have,
Please do.
your final comments on,
Well, listen,
maybe what we could do to continue promoting this music.
let me tell you, that's, my company is called Taboo Productions. We, we are pushing African music, period. Okay. African related music.
Yeah.
That's why you see me work with Cuban musicians. You will see me work with Congolese musicians and some others, from Cameroon, uh,
All over.
South Africa, you name it. Because we want to keep Africa relevant. Okay. Uh, see what Alain did with this film. It's tremendous. Okay, tremendous. It's not the first, it's not the last. But his input, and also not being a Congolese, adds something to it. You know, it's a testimony that what Congolese have been doing, it's a good thing. Last time he mentioned something that it's pretty sad. It made me feel sad, but it's good though. He said he knew about the Beatles, I think when he was a young man. I mean, like, I don't know, teenage or something. Then he learned about Franco in his 40s.
Yes.
And then he asked the question, why? You see, it's sad. This is to tell you that to him, that music is as much relevant today than it was back then. It's an addition to the beauty of music in the world.
Exactly.
We don't have to wait for someone like Alain to remind us that we have a great heritage to cherish. Okay? It's up to us to stand up and do research and try to find out rather than sit there and just listen. You know, I'll tell you, kudos to Kenyans. Kenyans are doing something that is amazing. Do you know in schools in Kenya, they are actually teaching Franco songs?
Oh, wow. It's amazing.
And they are doing this without any musical instrument,
Wow.
only a cappellas. I mean,
Amazing.
these are music teachers who are working with students. It's on YouTube. You can go there and Google, go
That's
YouTube, you
amazing.
see them.
Well done,
All right.
Kenyans.
So this is my way of trying, of telling Congolese, people from Angola, people from Cameroon, listen, we've got a serious archives of music. Okay?
Really true.
Even for musicians, before you just put a song out there, listen to these guys. Listen, and you will probably have answers to your own questions. Look, Picasso did this. Picasso he was such an amazing artist, but he had questions, which he didn't find answers in Europe. He started collecting African art.
Yeah.
By collecting African art, Picasso was able to be inspired. Picasso found answers to his own questions.
Yeah.
And Cubism came out. So today's artists, they need to listen to this music. Just sit there and listen. Give yourself a time. Okay? Absorb that music and see what is going to come out of you. Beautiful music, because we don't want to go under. We still want to go up. So
Yeah.
I'm asking people to do that, especially musicians.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Lubangi. Alan, what's your take on this before we take one last question that I've seen in the chat?
Um, I mean, what Lubangi just said is that's what it is. You know, it is okay. Try to hold my thoughts first. The Kenyan young kids and girls singing in a core of voices, a cappella, some of the hits of Franco, like
Mm.
Loca or Asda, is nothing short of amazing to watch. Like, you have to go right now after this ends to YouTube, find it, and you'll be like, wow, they sing beautifully with such passion, such love. It is not only a testament to the work of the teachers, but to the cultural legacy of this music in Kenya. How
Mm.
important it is for them. It's part of their story, their own soundtrack. So, yeah, I agree with Lubangi with everything. I think I will be happy that I run in a record store
Mm.
in, I don't know, London or Austria or even Peru or Colombia, and I see a whole section of vinyl records of Congolese rumba. 6 vinyl records of Papa Wemba, 6 or 7 of Franco and the Okel Jazz, 3 or 4 of Nico on Gran Calais, 4 of Orchestre Bebe, De La Vela, Psycho Langa Langa. Like, everything is there, re-edited for everybody to buy, to share, to keep it alive, to keep it alive. So we all, and when I say we, is Congolese, Cameroonians, Angolans, but also we, the lovers of Congolese music, of Congolese rumba that are in Japan, Belgium,
Mhm.
Colombia,
Mhm.
Peru, United States, France.
Mhm.
We all have to push to get
Mm.
there somehow. We will get there. It's just a matter of time because
Mm.
the music has all the qualities it needs to have. You know, it was just a circumstance that this hasn't happened before. And the Rumba Kings is just a little bit of pushing the road. There'll be other pushes,
Yeah,
many other,
yeah.
but it's up to us.
Thank you very much. There's one last question. Can you draw a parallel between Franco and Simaro's lyrics?
Okay,
That's
I'll
very
give that to
specific as well.
Lubangi, but just to make it short, me, from my personal point of view, Franco is very straight in that the situations that he addresses. It has a comical, a humor always there,
Mm.
because the situation he addresses, some of them are really like in the weeds, like a
Mm.
separation, a lover on the side of the couple. Those are
Mm.
complex things to talk about even now. But
Mm.
Franco manages to talk about with a little bit of humor, right?
Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
as Simaro, on the other side, for me, is more like a classical poet. You
Mm.
know, he takes a little bit of a distance and he opens up his view, no, from a particular situation, like Mabele.
Mm.
Look at Mabele, for example. So,
Mm.
but I will leave that to Lubangi.
Well, thank you, Alan. That's very good assessment. But we have to know that Franco and Lutumba, they went hand to hand. It's like
Mm.
one hand washes the other.
Mhm. Mhm.
Uh, Franco spoke, if I can put it in terms of he when he sung his song, it was like I
Mm.
say this, I'm telling you this.
Mm.
But Simaro was in third person.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, Simaro was third person. Franco was a street smart. He will tell you like they'll tell you in the street. Okay, he will laugh at you, and he will laugh at himself too.
Mm.
So don't think if Franco is laughing at you, guess what? He will laugh at himself next. Okay, but Simaro was not. Simaro was more like a wiser, older man with the knowledge
Mm.
who spoke in proverbs.
Mm.
Okay, proverbs. He was. That's the balance. So you will see if you went to. I mean, I had a chance to go to OK Jazz concert.
Wow.
I'm glad I did. I'm telling you, I'm glad I did. I remember that day we went to. I think it was Zaiko was not there. I'm like, oh my goodness, Zaiko's not there. Let's go. Viva la musique. Papa Wemba was not there, but his band was there. Ah, it was lousy. So then, if a friend of ours said, how about if we go to Under Trois? I'm like,
Wow.
oh man, that's for older people. What are you talking about? He said, let's just go. We old enough to get in. We got there. Of course, we got in. Oh boy. I was like, this is where I'm supposed to be. The music was so nice. Everybody was respectful. But one thing that I noticed, Franco was there behind the instrument, watching them play. They started with Cimaro's music, okay, caressing the crowd and everybody's dancing. When it came like somewhere around 2, 3 o'clock, that's when Franco came out.
Wow.
Bam, 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 da, 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 do, 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 bam. I was like, oh my God. I remember I went upstairs. I was watching now, watching them down. It was amazing. So I understood that Franco was the one who would come in and just like blow the roof off that place. Simaro will caress people, will warm people up, give you the wisdom to think about. Then all of a sudden, Franco comes in, bam. He'll take you to trance. Because you know what they used to say? You go in okay, but you come out KO. KO.
Tranquille, on sort
And that's Franco would knock you out. If I can say that.
No, amazing. I love that saying. I love that saying as well. And thank you for this great question. Thank you to all of our audience for this amazing discussion tonight. We are so blessed to have had 2 hours of these amazing human beings and experts of Congolese music. The movie is amazing. Remember, people, if you want to have more information about the movie, you can go on the website of the Rumba Kings to find out about all of the next screening dates. I think the next one is Paris.
Yep.
So that's an amazing one. And of course, if you guys are both in London again, you're more than welcome to come and host a live discussion for us, because I think one of the comments we've had from last week was that people would have liked to experience some of the music we mentioned. But unfortunately, because of YouTube restrictions on rights, we can't play music live. But there's nothing stopping us from having an actual physical event and play music live and go through that trance and listen to the sebens and all of that. So thank you really a lot to both of you, because this was just an amazing... We've been planning this for months, by the way, just so that people know. This is not just a conversation that came out from 2 weeks ago. It's been months of discussion with our 2 experts. And I'm really, really happy with everything that came out from last week and from this week's discussions. So, as they've given us their final comments, I will let them go before we close out the discussion. So, bye Alain, and bye Lubangi.
Bye-bye. Bye, Alain. Bye.
And to everyone listening to us tonight, thank you so much for having been such a great audience. As I said in the beginning, Lisanga Vibes is a safe space for the African diaspora. If you want to hear and find out more about us, you can subscribe to this YouTube channel. You can find us on social media. There will be more discussions on many other topics. I'm already working on the next one. And we do want you to keep listening to Congolese music. So there is also on this channel a playlist that we are creating and adding a lot of Congolese songs to, so that everything that was discussed in this Crispy Talk Show becomes live when you go through our channel and search that playlist. So please do go see on our channel the playlist that we've created with lots of Congolese music songs that are quite famous from different artists, so you can experience all the different music genres. If you liked the video and the discussion, please like it right there below. Subscribe to the channel and stay in touch with us. And I will not keep you online for much longer, but I want to thank you very much for having been such a great audience tonight. And I look forward to hosting more discussions for you very soon. Bye-bye.